It is my pleasure to welcome all of you today to the Honors College Lecture Series on the value of a liberal education. My name is Dr. Philip Phillips, and I'm the Associate Dean of the University Honors College. We have with us today our own Dean, Dr. John Weil, and he and I welcome you here today. Most of you are members of this class. Some of you are visitors, and I'm glad to have all of you here. So thank you for coming. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today. Marsha Barsky is Assistant Professor and Director of the Dance Program here at Middle Tennessee State University. She received her BFA in Dance from Arizona State University and her MFA in Performance and Choreography from the University of Colorado Boulder. She's trained in contemporary dance, somatic modalities, the Alexander technique, and yoga with many of the field's most notable teachers, both in the U.S. and abroad. She has been a company member of Desert Dance Theater and Shelter Repertory Dance Theater. Her choreography has been presented throughout the United States, and she is the founder of the Nashville-based company Rose, a contemporary dance company that offers project-based performances at venues throughout the area. She's also been on faculty at Vanderbilt University's Blair School of Music, Western Kentucky University, and CU Boulder, and is taught at numerous studios, festivals, and etc. From 2003 to 2007, she served as the director of the Vanderbilt Dance Program. She's been recently appointed as affiliate professor Chengdu University in China and will be offering contemporary Western dance perspectives to Chinese students and faculty. And I'm very pleased that she's here today because she has an incredible dimension to our own lecture series on liberal education. And her presentation today is on the value of the performing arts. So please join me in welcoming our speaker.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Phillips, for that introduction and also for extending the invitation to me to join this class and to discuss a topic that I feel really passionate about, which is the value of the performing arts in education in general, but particularly in a liberal education. And I'm really pleased at this occasion to be able to share with you my field, which is dance, but then open it up more broadly to the performing arts in general. I have a few images to help ground and situate the talk. So this first image is from an exhibit that was on display at the Frist Center for Visual Arts. The exhibit was entitled Phantom Bodies, the Human Aura in Art. I was invited in 2014 to collaborate with the Frist Center on an evening-length performance that recognized this exhibit through the medium of contemporary dance. This was the 5th collaboration that I have done at the Frist Center in Nashville, and these collaborations have expanded across different periods of art and different figures in art, from Expressionism to Impressionism, Japanisima, and Andy Warhol. I was really excited about the process of representing the physical body in a exhibit that concerned itself on the absence of the body. So this is a really interesting subject. These artists involved in this exhibit were interested in understanding what does it mean to not have a body. What is absence in presence in a sense? So they looked at everything from memory to empathy to sublimation, spirituality, violence, the mind-body continuum within this exhibit. So I went to the studio to imagine a way in which I could translate these images, these ideas, into a contemporary dance practice. I thought it would be really interesting to not only collaborate with my contemporary dance company, which is based in Nashville, Company Rose, but also use the occasion to look more closely at this exhibit through a course at MTSU that I offered last fall. And this class was a special topics class called Dance and Visual Art. So the students and I in this class, we studied the artist and the practices of the work that was on display at the Frist, and we decided to investigate choreographically and research choreographically the ideas that we discovered to represent this exhibit. So in this class, the students created a dance, and then this dance was performed alongside my company at the Frist in January of this year. So although the work that we do at MTSU is rooted in classical technique, it's an amalgamation really of contemporary vocabularies and classical technique. And it was my goal in this class to push the students' physical and mental boundaries, awaken innovation and creativity, and develop their ability to express, imagine, interact, and reinterpret their human experience through this exhibit. The students in this project understood their task at hand and worked to create innovative and unique perspectives on the performing arts. And to me, really, in this class unfolded and uncovered the value of performing arts in a liberal arts education and curriculum. And that by theory and practice, by way of theory and practice, they were given the opportunity to understand how their work relates to and bears upon history, culture, and society by connecting their knowledge through experiential learning endeavors within and beyond the body. And if we look closely at the value of performing arts in a liberal education, we see that this is not a new idea, and that we can trace this idea all the way back to the very origin and foundation of classical dance. So this is an image taken from the performance that I mentioned from the class. These are the students that were involved in the class at MTSU, the dance and visual art class. And there are 8 dancers here, and this piece was called That You Have, which comes from the concept memento mori, which basically means we all know that we have to die, which is essentially a sort of morbid topic. But again, it has to do with the absence of the body. And I'll talk a little bit more in terms of our creative practice and process that unfolded in the studio that led to this image. So in all of the ideas and values that really the learning outcomes that these students experienced in this class. So again, the essential learning outcomes that to me are valuable in the performing arts and that cross over into a liberal arts education. As I mentioned, the students were pushed beyond their physical and mental boundaries. They awakened innovation and creativity. They developed an ability to express, imagine, interact with, and reinterpret the human experience. And again, this is another image from the class. So from this class, the students were able to deepen an understanding of history, society, and culture, connect knowledge, learn through experience, practice in addition to theory, as I just mentioned, and understand the place and the value of the body. So these are the 4 cornerstones of the value of performing arts that we will explore more closely. So let's look at history, society, and culture. So in fact, as I mentioned, the value of the performing arts in a liberal education is not a new idea, and its very origins trace all the way back to the history of classical dance. And some of you might know that, the history of classical dance, because I taught an honor section of dance appreciation, and I see a few students in the class here today, so it's exciting to see you again and hopefully reconnect that knowledge. So classical Western dance in particular, and we'll call it ballet, which is, it's essentially ballet, is a systematic code. It's organized, and it reflects the culture's attitudes, ideas, and politics, and the development of the modern world. The development of classical Western dance, i.e. ballet, is intricately linked to the power and politics of this person right here, Louis XIV, or the Le Roi Soleil. And indeed, the codification of ballet happened as a result of his power and authority. So this is really interesting in order to understand the development of Western dance, and in particular ballet, also music and theater. Just exploring the power and politics of Louis XIV will help situate and ground us in those concepts. So Louis XIV was, as a young man, was encouraged by the chief minister of state, Cardinal Mazarin, to take dance and to study ballet and really believed in the power of dance as a vehicle and expression of the body, thus becoming a vehicle and expression of the state. So, and in 1653, this was manifest through a ballet called Le Ballet de la Nuit, which we see here, which is where Louis XIV was representing the Sun King, the god Apollo, and this became a larger metaphor for his reign. So when Mazarin died in 1661, Louis XIV did something pretty radical, and he became the first king to create absolute authority within the French state. So he decided to rule with absolutism and not have a chief minister. And this is, again, a very interesting point in terms of our understanding of the relationship of ballet to the liberal arts. To illustrate his status, he chose the sun as his emblem, and through dance and performance, he cultivated the image of the omniscient and infallible Sun King. That same year, in 1661, he also established the Académie Royale de Danse, which essentially became the world's first ballet school, and it's still in existence today. It's called the Paris Opera. So 1661. Louis XIV established what is still known today as the Paris Opera, and it's the first ballet school. And through his chief ballet master, which was a man by the name of Jean-Baptiste Lully, and the French playwright Molière, and another French ballet master, Pierre Beauchamp, they began to codify and organize a system of movement that we now know as ballet. So using music, theater, and dance as a metaphor, Lully, Molière, Beauchamp, and Lully, in fact, created ballets that would represent the absolute power and authority of Louis XIV. Through his success at court, the ballet master Pierre Beauchamp was eventually named the superintendent of the King's Ballets. And herein, as the superintendent, he began to codify a Western technique, which is what we now know as ballet. So if anyone has ever taken ballet, you know the 5 positions of the feet. How many of you have taken a ballet class before? So a few of you have taken a ballet class. Even if you've not taken a ballet class, you probably have seen this position before. This is first, second, third, fourth, and fifth position. All of these positions became codified under Beauchamp during the reign of Louis XIV. And herein, the practice of ballet begins to distinguish itself from folk forms of dance, our popular dance forms of the day. Through this systematization and classification of dance in the 17th century, under the reign of Louis XIV, we begin to see the important point of codification. And in a sense, codification is a form of control. And in order to understand the reign of Louis XIV and his approach to warfare, politics, religion, and social organization, it is valuable to examine his own approach and his own perspective on the performing arts. And again, because it's codified and controlled. So herein lies the first value of performing arts in a liberal education. And without a clear understanding of the relationship of ballet, music, and theater to the history, power, politics, and society of 17th century France, under the reign of Louis XIV, we would be unable to understand the rise of France as a world power in the 17th century, along the way the idea of codifying not just art, but almost every aspect of society. In this respect, the importance of the performing arts in a broader liberal arts education is the idea of connecting knowledge so that we understand specific ideas or events against a much broader framework. And I just thought I'd show you a little bit of pop culture, if you don't mind. This is a clip from the 2000 film Le Roi Danse, so it gives you a sense of what this world might have looked like in the 17th century, so it's not totally abstract in our imagination.
Puissance, plaisir, lumière. que monte la lueur de l'astre, qu'aura l'aube de son feu. Déjà, l'honneur suit sa lumineuse trace.
Regardez, c'est le prince de Conti.
Il est donc entré en grâce?
Le roi l'a repris en laisse, oui. Vous voyez comme il file d'eau.
Okay, there's a larger sort of narrative unfolding here, but you can get a sense of the way in which these performances helped signify and reinforce his role of power, which then would affect the politics, the society, the order, the codification of the day. All right, so now from this image of Louis XIV as really one of the first ballet stars of the modern world, it brings us into a contemporary image of a male ballet dancer. So we've come a long way, but you can still see just in that example some of the same qualities of line and form and aesthetics and strength and presence really in this image as we saw in the clip of the movie. So here we have our next key value, which is connecting knowledge. To me, it's really interesting to be a part of this conversation because I was not trained in a liberal arts environment. To my dismay, I've come to realize I was trained in a conservatory setting in a large public institution such as MTSU, but I was trained in a college of performing arts in a conservatory type setting. So most of my work was done in the dance studio, and in fact, almost all of it was done in the dance studio. And subsequently to that training, since I'm now working in a university, I often find myself saying, darn, if I only taken that English class, or if I'd only taken that history class. And I realize the importance of connecting knowledge and how valuable that's been for me for my own career. Just as I have an affinity for dance history, I think it's really beautiful. But the value of connecting the knowledge, say from an example like Louis XIV, to my own education in dance would have really helped me, would have helped broaden my understanding of the entire 17th century. So that's really a pleasure and a value is connecting knowledge. In your own classes at university, one of, again, the pleasure of the liberal arts degree is to connect literature to language, history to philosophy, sociology to the physical sciences. And just as Louis XIV's example illustrates, we can get a broad swath and spectrum of knowledge from those examples. We recognize not only in the liberal arts, we recognize not only the specifics of art during one period or another by looking, say, at the 17th century, but we also come to see how the performing arts are specifically connected to a broader social, political, and historical trend. In this regard, the idea of codification, and you can see this gentleman here is in a codified image, which we can study, say, in regards to ballet, comes to be an important example of a larger effort that spills over into other realms, such as, for example, history of the history of warfare, which Louis XIV codified warfare in the same way that he codified ballet, or the same way that he codified poetry and music of the day. So you see these same similar ideas are connecting. So for example, if we're studying painting, it can be enhanced by our study of art history or Picasso. If we're studying architecture, by studying painting will help our understanding of architecture. Architecture can be understood in relationship to engineering. Engineering is made possible through mathematics. Mathematics is further understood through physics. Physics can further be understood, yes, even by dance. There are lots of elements of physics in dance. And so we begin to see a vast amount of knowledge, but also we can link these elements together. And just as we can link Louis XIV from the battlefield to the ballet. Another key example is experiential learning. So just as we are able to undertake reenactments and understand the particularities of Louis XIV, we also can recreate the material elements that combined and contributed to particular products. It's hardly possible to understand the originality of, say, Cézanne or Picasso without some understanding of what kind of material they used. And one of the particularities of the performing arts programs is that they bring students from the theoretical to the metaphysical into the practice and the practical. This is not a novel idea. For example, students who have done lab work or field work in chemistry, biology, astronomy, anthropology, and geology are familiar with this process. So those of you who are in these fields, raise your hand if you're in one of these fields. You've probably undertaken similar work, say in a lab or in a field. This is very similar to the performing arts. So it's not that you need to learn to dance in order to understand the importance of Louis XIV, but the experience of dance or playing music or acting in a rigorous setting provides a practical understanding of the creative process. Learning the performing arts not only develops a cognitive understanding of history, culture, and society, but it also develops embodied knowledge. Let me just give you a quick example. So in this dance right here that you have, that was the performance at the Frist, that was in collaboration with MTSU students and my company, Company Rose. We looked at what it means to have a memory, a social memory and a private memory. So all of us have memories and we store all of those memories in our bodies. Some of those memories are quite personal, some of them are quite social. So what I did for these students is we created a list. And one side of the list was personal memory and one side of the list was private memory. And these memories happened in year 5, year 10, year 15, and year 20, depending on their age. And so for their personal memory, they gave a list of things that they remembered, from holding their mother's hand to getting scared in a large crowd to having the excitement of a first love. Those are all personal memories. And in terms of social memories, some of them remembered 9/11, some of them remember the tragedy of Columbine. So these became social memories that they had in common. And from that list, we generated movement. So we would take a word from the list. So maybe the word was embrace. So a memory might be embracing their mother after the loss of their uncle. And so we would take that word embrace, and then we would turn that into movement. But we're not representing that movement per se. We're not miming that word. We're representing it in an innovative and novel way. So if the embrace is like this, then maybe the embrace becomes something quite more developed to represent the idea of an embrace. So we're not miming or mimeticking these words, but we're actually generating novel and innovative ideas through the experience of those memories to create a movement practice. And so that's what happened in this piece through experiential and creative learning. This became an embodied knowledge. Memory is stored in the body, and this became an embodied knowledge through them. So it's lived through the entire mind and the body in relationship to the two. And this leads us to my final point, which is that we need to go beyond ideas that live just specifically in the mind and their realization by recognizing the role of the actual physical body. And this is a crucial realm in which this kind of work is done in the performing arts. So it's really impossible to not have a body and be in a play, or to perform an instrument, or to be a dancer. So one of the key values of the performing arts and the liberal arts education is to recognize and understand the place and value of the body. And this is another image from the performance at the Frist. So in order to find mastery and success in the performing arts, the practice of music, theater, and dance all rely on the complex interplay between the body, brain, and mind. Dance in particular is deeply committed to the mind-body relationship and how it can be and should be explored. We valorize the study of the brain, and we examine it from the perspective of chemistry, physics, neurology, medicine, and even history. But the brain is situated inside the body, and its characteristics are developed in a complex relationship with the body, and of which it is a composite part. But it's very difficult to study the body as a body, especially in classes such as physics or chemistry, because the body in those realms is often the vessel or the vehicle that simply transports or protects or encases the brain. Dance, for example, focuses us to confront the very physicality of our existence, as well as the ways in which thought is quite literally embodied. So just as the last example of the dancers generating movement, how do we take an idea, how do we embody it, how is that then rendered through the physical manifestation of form in our own casing of the body? So looking back on history, we find the very roots of the institution that we are now studying in, which is the university. So from its early manifestations in the Western world to places like Oxford, Cambridge, Brussels, and MTSU, we find in some sense of the whole human being, nicely captured in a poem by William Butler Yeats that represents the line, soldier, scholar, horseman he, and all that did done naturally. This trio of qualities everywhere present in the liberal arts, combining as it does, makes some sense for the body politic, the body of knowledge, and the movement of the actual physical body. One of these realms without the other two impoverishes all of them. So with that, I thank you, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you for your presentation. We have plenty of time for questions and comments, so please. Anyone?
Yes.
I have a question. If with Louis XIV and his influence on ballet, and with dance becoming so much a part of a reflection of power and society as it is, have we not maybe lost something where it's more an individual expression and not so much an expression of society or a particular power?
I think that's an excellent question. I think I would say that it's really, yes, I think that we have lost a sense of the collective and the representation of the collective through dance. But I also think that one of the joys of studying, say, dance through history is that we also have to take into account the modern era. And as we move out of the 17th century through the 18th, 19th century, and we get into the 20th century, the ideas of the individual, the ideas from the separation of say, 1789, the French Revolution, right? It happened for a reason, and that revolution of spirit, I think, is still found and present in dance. And even though we are very much an individual culture, I mean, dance is represented individually, and there's an individualized aesthetic. I think that there are some ways in which we can understand and organize what's happening within the present day through movement. It's a little of both, but yes, I think so. It's a good question.
Yes. Do you think, you said, you can understand physics greater through dance. Mm-hmm. Do you think dancers benefit from understanding more physics? Does it help them prevent injury? And do they learn enough physics?
Absolutely. I'm actually reading about this right now because I'm very intrigued by because I know nothing about physics, and I would love to know more. And I pretend to know in my movement classes as we're talking about momentum and gravity and force, and those concepts can definitely help support an aesthetic that and actually a biomechanical safety, because if you have this relationship with, say, gravity, and you're going into a turn in full momentum and full force, if you can counterbalance that and counteract that and redirect your energy, say, on a different trajectory going up, then you're not going to fall on your face, right? So I think that there is a relationship there, and that absolutely in the performing arts, and in particular dance, to have a curriculum where dancers are learning biomechanics, and they're learning physics, and they're learning physiology, kinesiology, biology, that only enhances and strengthens their technique. So absolutely.
Yes.
Have you worked any with some of the new technology programs that enhance the training of the dancer, for example, along those same lines, showing arches and momentum and gravity and force within the program, in where they film a dancer, and then go through the arcs to the program actually analyzes the movement, or used any of the technology enhancing programs that are used to transform the dance perhaps into a combination of dance and visual art. Do we do any of that here?
No, but I'm excited by those practices, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity to explore that relationship. We don't have the resources at the moment within our department because we're a minor program, but there are many universities that have large BFA, MFA, even PhD programs in dance where they're utilizing those technologies. I know, for example, at my undergraduate school, Arizona State, they did a lot of work with technology and dance, and specifically these programs that you're mentioning. And again, I think it just broadens our understanding of computer science and of dance and of technology and where the benefits and the boons are within those overlaps. I would certainly love to explore that, though.
It's also one of the ways that they prove to the Olympic Committee that dance was indeed a sport.
Oh, interesting. By measuring it.
By measuring it using those programs.
Fantastic. I would love to play with them. I've sadly only seen them from afar, and I've never actually experienced it. Unlike the experiential learning that I've had here, but I do have an appreciation for it. We do have a class this semester that we're offering called Dance for the Camera, which is utilizing technology as to create specifically choreography that's intended for screen, what's called screen dance. So we all have these phones that can capture video, and so how do you look at that particular space and that particular screen to create movement that fits and an aesthetic that fits on that screen, or then can turn into this screen? So offering technologies in that way to not have dance in its 3D state, but then offer it in this space right here.
We have a number of classes that are incorporating some of the performing arts into experiential learning. I know Dr. Thomas includes TPR in her language classes, and some of the reacting classes you have to act out a character in order to progress in a game that is ultimately great for the class. Right. And looking at some of the ideas that you expressed, which sounded like phenomenology, which is something I'm very interested in myself. Absolutely. How do you think there's a way for the performing arts department to more integrate with some of the other classes and get physics or get astronomy or any of those other classes that don't yet have a physical portion to their classes to be able to help them? Mnemonics, song, dance, getting up and speaking. I know for a lot of the sciences, getting up and speaking is a terrifying thing. Right, absolutely. But do you see any of that sort of integration?
Yes, I would say absolutely. I think just the first thing to come to mind is a neuroscience class in which you're actually using and looking at movement from the state of a mind-body practice and what is happening on a neurological level when you are, say, memorizing movement. I think that would be a really fantastic way of integrating, getting out of the dance studio and into a classroom. I think that would be a really interesting first step for me. It's a personal interest. Is just really understanding movement on a neurological level and what's happening in our brain when we really think about movement, and if where I know that the end of space is here, and then how I know from my fingertip where the end of my toe is, and I can balance that. Those questions are really intriguing to me, and would love to explore that further. So I think it's ripe. I think it's ripe for possibilities, and I know many other universities are exploring such terrain, and yeah.
Well, in my physics classes, we actually like often encounter with like problems like regarding, well, a dancer does this kind of movement. How would you analyze the moment of inertia of that dancer, something like that. And like in my physics textbook, well, they had Albert Einstein on like a turntable, and like we had to analyze like if he does this movement, what would happen. And so I guess we just keep that in mind, like that this applies to dancing, but we approach it more like theoretically rather than actually doing it.
And finding that.
Yeah. Well, actually, my professor did do it in front of us. But
did you get to enjoy?
No. No.
Maybe next time.
But yeah.
That's a great point.
So I thought that would be cool to share.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
This is actually more of a suggestion. These kind of integrations, and the things that I was talking about as well, are all integrations between the performing arts and sciences and other liberal arts. But these are exactly the kind of integrations that they're looking for, I'm certain, in the MT Engage program. And these are the kind of, this is right for that kind of opportunity for you to jump in and say, we could integrate these things. You know, maybe work with this physics professor and her linguistics.
This is fantastic. So it seems like this is something that you all would be really receptive to, is having this kind of integration in your classes.
And which the college is currently trying to develop in that MT Engage.
Excellent. Absolutely. I'm just curious what you all are studying. What are some of the topics that you're studying? What are your majors? Sociology.
Social work with a dance minor.
Social work. Physics, yes.
Also
Physics. Biochemistry. Biochemistry, excellent.
Global studies and cultural geography.
Global studies and cultural geography, excellent. Yes.
English with a minor in education, a major in psychology, and minor in science and philosophy.
Wow, that's a whole liberal arts education right there. That's exciting. That's exciting. That's fantastic. And any of you also have a performing arts practice? Any of you play an instrument? Many of you play an instrument?
I'm actually.
You're a dancer?
Yeah, I used to teach social dance.
Oh, fantastic. What kind of social dance?
Most of ballroom and Lindy Hop swing. That was mine.
Excellent.
But all the Victorian ballroom dancing.
Excellent. And your social work?
No, history and anthropology with a minor in anthropology.
So fantastic. But I'm seeing a lot of I'm just through social dance, there's so much anthropology. I mean, there's so much just, that's a wonderful relationship between how you understand a society through its movement. What was happening culturally during the 1920s when the Lindy Hop was popular, right there is a wonderful link and bridge to those two fields. So in fact, your work in dance is probably really serving your major.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great.
Questions, comments? Thank you very much.